Today, we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly, a kind of unsettling idea. What if there's a hidden economic pattern? Something that has nothing to do with military power or revolutions, that's the real reason great empires fall.
You know, we're always taught that empires get crushed by invading armies or torn apart by massive revolts, right? But what if the real killer is something way quieter, something that's already happening right inside their own walls?
Well, the source we're digging into today argues that the fatal flaw isn't on the battlefield at all. It's like a self-destruct button, and it's built right into the empire's own economic system. Yeah, it all comes down to the money.
All right, so what is this pattern exactly? Let's break down this cycle that just keeps repeating itself time and time again throughout history. Okay, so here it is. This is the entire 7-stage framework. You can almost think of it as a roadmap to ruin. It all starts when an empire is at its absolute peak. That's dominance. But then it gets greedy, it expands too far, too fast, overextension. To pay for all that, it starts spending money it doesn't have, which is deficit spending. When that's still not enough, it moves to a really dangerous step, currency debasement. Basically, they start devaluing their own money. And you know what that leads to, right? First, inflation, which then causes a total loss of confidence in the whole system. And the final stage? Collapse. Now, what's so wild is we're going to apply this exact roadmap to 4 huge world empires. So, where do we start? With the original blueprint, of course, the Roman Empire. Rome is the perfect case study for this pattern of economic self-destruction. Now, for a long time, the foundation of Rome's economic might was this coin right here, the denarius. For centuries, people trusted it because it was the real deal, made of 4.5 grams of pure silver. That trust, that's what allowed Rome to pay its legions, build those incredible cities, and run its massive territories. It was, without a doubt, the US dollar of its time.
But this timeline shows this self-inflicted wound. See, as Rome's spending on wars and crazy projects just spiraled out of control, the emperor started, well, cheating. They started debasing the currency, mixing in cheaper metals so they could mint more coins from the same amount of silver. And look at this, you can see the silver content just collapse. It goes from 90% pure under Nero all the way down to a measly 5% just 2 centuries later. I mean, the government was literally destroying its own money from the inside out.
And the result of all that? An absolute catastrophe. Prices across the empire exploded by 50 times. 50! Just try to imagine that. A loaf of bread that cost you 1 denarius now costs 50. The money became basically worthless. It caused total economic chaos, and pretty soon, the government couldn't even afford to fund itself. The whole empire was just rotting from within.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, that was ancient Rome, but this pattern didn't die with them. Not even close. Let's fast forward and see how 2 more recent global powers, Spain and Britain, basically made the exact same mistakes.
Spain's story it's a wild paradox. They hit the jackpot, right? Found more silver in the Americas than any empire in history. But here's the crazy part. It actually made them poorer. They flooded Europe with so much silver that it destroyed its value, kicking off massive inflation. And instead of investing in their own country, they blew it all on endless wars and luxury. They got so deep in debt they defaulted on their loans 4 times in just 40 years. Can you imagine? They completely lost the trust of anyone who would lend the money.
And you see the exact same story with Great Britain. This quote just nails their situation after World War II. The empire had bankrupted itself to win the war. I mean, think about it. At their peak, they were the dominant global power, but the staggering cost of fighting and winning 2 world wars just shattered their economy and buried them in a mountain of debt they could never climb out of.
And you can track their decline right here through their currency, the pound sterling. First, they abandoned the gold standard so they could print money to pay for World War I. Then, after the Second World War, at the Bretton Woods Conference, they officially lost their top spot as the world's reserve currency to the US dollar. After that, it was just one humiliating devaluation after another. Every single one of these steps destroyed a little more global trust, and as the currency crumbled, the empire itself just dissolved.
Okay, and that brings us to the present day. Now we're going to take this exact same 7-stage framework and, following the analysis from our source, apply it to the United States.
According to the source material, this is the pivotal moment. 1971, the US closes the gold window, basically cutting the dollar's last high to physical gold. It's often called the Nixon shock. And just like that, the dollar became a pure fiat currency, backed by nothing more than faith and credit. In our 7-stage pattern, this is the moment stage 4, currency debasement, officially begins.
And ever since that day, the symptoms of stage 2 and 3, overextension and deficit spending, have gone into hyperdrive. Just look at the national debt. It has absolutely exploded from under $1 trillion back in 1980 to, well, over 36 trillion today. That's a 40 times increase in just 45 years. The numbers are just staggering.
And it's not just the debt, it's the sheer amount of new money being created. The scale of this it's honestly hard to wrap your head around. Get this, between 2020 and 2022, over $4 trillion were created out of thin air. Let me say that again. More new money was printed in those 2 years than in the entire previous century. This is the modern-day version of Rome secretly mixing cheap copper into its silver coins.
So what's the result of all of this? Well, we are now seeing very clear signs of stage 6, a loss of confidence. Sure, the US dollar still makes up 58% of global reserves, which is a lot, but that number is falling. I mean, to put it into perspective, back in the year 2000, it was over 70%. What's happening is that central banks all around the world are actively moving their money into other currencies and, yep, into gold.
So this is the moment where it all clicks into place. When you lay it out side by side like this, the pattern is just undeniable. Rome debased its currency by reducing silver content. The US prints trillions of dollars. Spain racked up so much debt it defaulted. The US has a national debt over 36 trillion. Britain lost its reserve currency status. You see? The methods are different, but the symptoms are exactly the same. For Rome, Spain, and Britain, we know how the story ends. For the United States, the source just leaves a big, chilling question mark.
Which brings us to our final section, the crossroads. Based on everything we've seen from history, what could actually happen next?
Well, history seems to show 3 main paths. The first is a kind of controlled decline, like what happened with Great Britain. Slow, painful adjustment to being a less powerful nation. The second is a much scarier, chaotic collapse, more like Rome, where the currency fails and the entire system just breaks down. And then there's a third option, a reset and restructure, where a whole new financial system has to be built to replace the old broken one.
And this final quote really drives the whole point home. People always want to believe that this time is different, right? But the source argues that economic laws are kind of like the laws of physics. They're absolute. As the quote says, the pattern doesn't care about American exceptionalism, it doesn't care about military strength, the pattern is economic. It just applies to everyone, no exceptions.
Which leaves us with one last, really provocative question. If this pattern holds true, it's not a matter of if it completes, but when. So, looking at history as our guide, how long do we have until these final stages play out? How long until confidence is completely gone and the cycle finishes once again? That's the question we're left to think about.